Good day everyone. Before I proceed to my video, let me introduce to you myself. By the way, I am Angel Marbistal, 20 years old, and I am third year college student of Buena Vista Community College with the course Bachelor of Secondary Education major English. So from today's video, I will be vlogging one of my favorite movies, which is the Titanic. And after that, I will criticize the movie with the use of 5 literary theory of criticism. We have the Historicism, Psychoanalytic Criticism, Marxist Criticism, Feminist Criticism, and lastly will be the reader response criticism. So without further ado, now let's start. Historicism of the movie Titanic. Titanic is a 1997 movie directed by James Cameron, which achieved substantial commercial success and positive critic reviews. Some people view Titanic as a story about the sinking of the eponymous ship in 1912, which was the largest vessel afloat at the time. They argue that the major plotline about love between Rose and Jack was created to make the story attractive to the audience. The movie is indeed based on a real-life tragedy and depicts a range of historical characters such as Captain Edward, John Smith, and Thomas Andrews. However, it does not merely show a love story against a backdrop of the catastrophe. Titanic demonstrates a desperate fight survival Rose struggled to overcome her mother and fiance's dominations. The fight for survival between the rich and the poor and woman's attempts to succeed in the male-dominated society. Psychoanalytic Criticism. Titanic is the depiction of Rose's struggles with the consequences of her dysfunctional relationship with her parents and subsequently her fiancé. Since childhood, she was obliged to follow the social norms accepted in higher society. The audience learned it from the episode when Rose sees a mother teaching her 4-year-old daughter to correct posture and hold a teacup. This was exactly what Rose experienced as a child, and she grew tired of all the convention characteristic of the high social class. However, she could not object to her mother's commands, even being a grown-up 17-year-old girl. After her father's death, Rose was obliged to marry Carl in order to cope with her family's debts and preserve status. He was a wealthy man who treated her like his possession. This relationship negatively affected her character and laid the foundation for her struggle depicted in the movie. It seems that Rose was so deeply affected by that necessity to obey that she developed an intense fear of death. However, she was afraid to die not literally but spiritually. It means that she was sure that if she married Carl, her individuality would cease to exist. Jack described Rose's feeling as being stuck on a train. You can get off course you're marrying this fella. According to Tyson, when the fear of death reaches the extreme, living oneself becomes so painful that one's only choice is death. This happened to Rose when she desperately turned toward the ship, reeling and started to climb over it, aiming to commit suicide. Luckily for her, Jack witnessed her suicide attempt and gave her a helping hand. It seems that Jack could not stay aloof because of his worldview shaped by his past experiences. When he was 15, his parents died in a fire, and it greatly affected his toward life. Jack said to Rose, something like that teaches you to take life as it comes at you, to make it day count. In a sense, Jack also had a fear of death. According to Tyson, this psychological issue translates into a more general fear of loss. Having experienced the death of his parents, Jack was afraid to lose any valuable things that came to him in his life. In a conversation with Rose, he said that his father always wanted to see the ocean, but never managed to do so. Jack feared that something similar could happen to him, which was why he decided not to miss any opportunities that arose before him. For this reason, he was happy to win the ticket to Titanic, and he seized the chance to rescue Rose when she was about to jump. Rose's behavior demonstrates her unstable sense of self, which becomes especially evident after her acquaintance with Jack. Tyson defined these core issues as the inability to sustain a feeling of personal identity due to which individuals change their conduct depending on who is around them. In the face of death, Rose managed to overcome the constraints imposed here or by her parents and her fiancé. Instead of trying to save herself, she rushed to rescue Jack. Thus, Titanic depicts Rose's liberation from her dysfunctional relationship with her mother and Cal, which was driven by her fear of loss of her freedom and identity. From the Marxist Criticism, Titanic is a movie that invites the audience to condemn capitalism by showing unequal struggles for survival between the rich and the poor. In the film, the ship represents a capitalist society. The first class was separated from the third class, and there was startling difference between them. People from the first class resided in the opulent rooms, had servants to assist them, and they were served with various delicacies. In contrast, the third class was located at the lower deck and roomed with plain interiors. Passengers from the lower deck were not allowed to enter the premises intended for the upper class. This design of the ship represents the societal divide between the bourgeois, those who control resources, and the proletariat, comprises mainly of the manual laborers. As Tyson notes, Marxists focus on the distribution of the economic power because this is the field where the fiercest battle takes place, the ones between the haves and the have-nots. Titanic depicts one such fight that demonstrates the injustice of the capitalist system. Cameron sets the scenes for the struggle for survival by vividly demonstrating the relationship between the rich and the poor. The upper class treated the lower class contemptuously, and if they were less worthy than themselves. Marxists oppose rage individualism because it encouraged people to value their own interests higher than those of society, especially of unprivileged people. Indeed, in the movie, the majority of the upper class did not care about the passenger of the lower class. Titanic shows not only rich people's indifference toward the poor, but also overt cruelty. Lifeboats were departing half full, but no one was willing to return and help the remaining passenger. Thus, from the Marxist point of view, Titanic shows a story of a fight for survival between the wealthy and the poor. In this battle, the lower class is defeated because the power of the allocate the available resources is concentrated in the hands of the rich, but they use it only for their own interest. From the feminist criticism, Titanic is also deeper than a love story against the background of the sinking ship. The movie shows the classic patriarchal society and how women struggle to survive in it. Patriarchy is defined as any culture that privileges men by promoting traditional gender roles. In Titanic, this culture is evident among the upper class in which men are considered superior to women. Rose and her mother, Ruth David Bukater, represent two different approaches that women can take in a male-dominated society. Ruth is a traditional patriarchal woman, which means that she internalized the values and norms of patriarchy. She sincerely believed that it was men's work to provide for the family, which was why she urged Rose to marry Cal. It is fine match with Hockley, and it will ensure our survival. When Rose said to her that it was unfair for her mother to force her to marry the man that she did not love, Ruth answered, "Of course it's unfair, we're women. Our choices are never easy." Thus, Ruth thought that it was not just that women had to rely on women who wanted to lead a decent life. However, she accepted these patriarchal values and saw no alternative in her lifestyle. In contrast, Rose opposed patriarchal ideology because she didn't want to feel inferior to men, particularly her fiancé Cal. In Titanic, Cal is depicted as a traditional patriarchal man who believes in male superiority and woman's obedience. For example, when Rose said that she was his fiancé, not some poor man, "You can command," Cal replied, "Yes, you are, and my wife in practice, if not yet by law. She will be honor me as a wife is required to honor her husband." However, This is not the fate that Rose wanted for herself. Instead, she eventually refused to act like a lady and even asked Jack to teach her to speak like a man. Due to her courage to act against traditional gender rules and behavior patterns, she was able to avoid marrying the domineering man and managed to live the life of her choice. In response criticism. As I watched the movie, Titanic was the best heartbreaking movie that I ever watched. I felt many emotions from the beginning until the end. I put myself in the situation of Rose, the one who failed and reminisced the tragic story. It kindly many emotions in my heart from the start. The solidity of the movie was based on a true-to-life story. Plus, their music, unique effects, and their emotions was really astonishing. I feel that I'm in the real scenario. They bring me in the sense of being there and how lamentable the events was. Seeing many people screaming and crying out while the Titanic is sinking, many people are floating and asking for help while dying was one of the very emotional part of the story. But the most emotional part to me is when Jack died, because, as I said, I put myself as Rose. If I am Rose, I'd rather to die with Jack rather than to live life full of sadness. Like the story of Romeo and Juliet, they died together. The theme of movie tragedy was very touching, but I'll be the director. Both Rose and Jack will survive. And I don't like the essence of the story from romance to tragedy. I want tragedy, but the happy ending, like the story of Cinderella. I conclude that the movie catches us first through the story of the lovers, Jack and Rose, to get our sympathy, so that many people can relate to it, especially those who are lovers or in love like me. Then we felt already loved and cherished every minute of romance in the story suddenly at the end of Jack dying. So I concluded the director of the movie deliberately that Jack really need to die to have marks on the heart of the viewers. Therefore, Jack and Rose were instruments that really gives impact that support the whole story, especially the theme of the story tragedy. And that's the end of my video. Thank you for watching.